Okay, hello, I'm the vegan cowboy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my station. This is Trace Perot. I am the raw vegan cowboy. This video is going to be about me attempting as a layperson to explain how to cure diabetes. So this video is going to be for people who are standard American dieters, standard SADs. SAD, in case you don't know, is the standard American diet. You're eating meat 1, 2, 3 times a day, eating lots of processed food, lots of sugar, lots of stimulants, caffeine, alcohol, marijuana, what have you. This is for people who are doing that. If you're already a raw vegan, you're not going to get diabetes if you're a low-fat raw vegan or an 80-10-10er. But there might be some information that you get out of this. But it's primarily for people who don't have a clue. They're following the medical model, and it's not working. They're not happy. They want to change. So this is what that's all about. So, okay, not to beat around the bush, we're going to get right to it. The way that you will cure diabetes and greatly reduce the effects of, that's diabetes 2, and greatly reduce the effects and the need for insulin for diabetes 1, is that you cut your fat consumption down to 10% of the total calories that you consume. That's how you get rid of diabetes, because it is the fat, the elevated fat in the standard American diet that causes diabetes. It is not the sugar. The sugar is secondary, okay? The sugar is a secondary factor. The immediate factor, the immediate mechanism is your body's ability to absorb sugar from your bloodstream, and that is determined by the amount of fat that you consume. And that number has to be at 10% below, or 10% of total calories. All right, so if you're consuming 2,000 calories in a day, then 200 calories and 200 calories only is what you are allowed or can consume in order to avoid pre-diabetic and diabetic conditions developing in your body. So if there is anybody out there watching this video that thinks they need a little coaching in this, progression of getting healthier, moving towards raw food, moving through the different levels of diet and cleansing yourself and mastering the whole raw food, low-fat, raw vegan regime or lifestyle, please contact me at my regular email, which is tracetjp@gmail.com. That's T as in Tom, R-A-Y-C as in cat, E, and then the letters T as in Tom, J as in John, P as in Paul, TJP @gmail.com. I would be happy to make an arrangement for a nominal fee to coach you. I have, basically at this point, 34 years of experience dealing with diet. And I feel that I'm more than, qualified to coach anybody who wants to get healthy and fit. And so, yeah, just give me an email and So let's do the numbers on diabetes. Here I Googled how many people in the United States have diabetes. As of May 2024, 38.4 million people in the United States have diabetes, which is about 11.6% of the population. Of those, 29.7 million have been diagnosed and 8.7 million have not. Additionally, 98 million Americans have prediabetes, which is when blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but not yet high enough to be classified as type 2 diabetes. Okay. Also, I got the statistic that 1 in 3 citizens of the United States, 1 in 3 people in the United States are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. So that's how serious the problem is. 1 in 3. So if you're in a group of people, you can count 1, 2, 3, and every third person is either diabetic or is pre-diabetic and will get it someday, more than likely. Okay, then I Googled how much money is spent worldwide on diabetes medication. Okay, here's what came up. In 2021, the world spent an estimated $966 billion on diabetes-related healthcare, including medication costs. This is expected to increase to over $1 trillion by 2045. The global diabetes drug market was valued at $66 billion in 2023 and is projected to be $132.36 billion by 2034. So that's kind of why I'm doing this video, because, you know, diabetes is a man-made disease. It's something that people are doing to themselves because of lack of knowledge about how the body works. So that's what this video is going to try to clear up. How do we cut down on our fat if we're eating a standard American diet? Okay, so the easiest thing to do is find the food that has the highest fat content, which is any animal product, any cheese, milk, eggs, dairy, yogurt, fish, chicken, lamb, you know, beef, any of that stuff. Those are all high in fat, okay? So if you want a quick solution, you don't want to quit eating all the stuff you're eating, including processed carbohydrates and processed sugar, then cut back on the animal products to a very minuscule level. If you're going to eat meat, eat it once a day. Eat a small little, you know, piece of whatever, animal flesh, and let it go at that. Don't eat any other source of fat. And you might be successful in getting your total calorie consumption down to 10%. Okay, but you got to make sure that you're eating all your other stuff, like the pasta and the rice and the beans and the flour, the bread, you know, that you're consuming a substantial amount of that, because that's the only way that little chunk of meat is going to wind up being only 10% of your calories. This is something that you might want to experiment with, you know. Another way to do it would be maybe to eat meat, you know, a little bit of animal products, whatever it is that you have to eat, you feel you have to eat and have an urge to eat. Maybe eat them just once or twice a week. And that's going to lower your calorie intake to 10%, you know. So these are things that you can look into, try to do if you're just totally unwilling to cut back on standard American diet food, and you're totally not sold on the idea that simple carbohydrates are the way to go, okay? If you're a vegan, basically you want to, yeah, same thing. Well, not the same thing because you're not eating animal products, but if you're cooking food, you're a vegetarian, you want to come, if you're a vegetarian, you want to come back on the cheese and the milk and the eggs. If you're a pescatarian, you want to cut back on the quantity of fish and up the amount of carbohydrates. If you're a vegan, a cooked vegan, of course, you're going to get your fat from nuts, seeds, and avocados, and you want to keep those at a very minimal amount, you know. And that's how you're going to, cut your fat intake to 10%. And once again, this will allow the carbohydrate sugars to get into your body and fuel your body. Okay, so there's certain things you have to know about food, about nutrition, about eating, okay? And the first one of those things, in order to be able to really get anything out of this video is going to be the idea of macronutrients. There are 3 macronutrients, and all food that you eat falls into one of these macronutrient categories. The categories are protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So everything you eat is either a protein, a fat, or a carbohydrate, or a combination thereof, okay? So we need to get that one straight. Let's talk about the sources of these macronutrients, just, without any qualifications or judgments or anything. So the sources of these macronutrients are, individually, the sources of carbohydrates are things like starch, but starch in general, like rice, beans, pasta, bread, any kind of flour, any kind of grain. These are all starchy carbohydrates, okay? So they're all come in the carbohydrate category of macronutrients. Also, in a separate class, and I'll explain to you why, are fruits, high-density sweet fruits like bananas and jackfruit and durian. Anything with a very high density that's a fruit that's sweet is a great source of calories for, a great source of carbohydrate calories. So the source of protein is vegetables. Vegetables have protein, greens, all different kinds of vegetables. I imagine nuts and seeds might have a little bit of protein. I really don't know, but it's not prominent. They're more a source of fat. And of course, animal products have a certain amount of protein, not that much protein, not so much as you would think. Actually, they have more fat than protein in a lot of cases. So any kind of animal product, cheese, milk, eggs, any kind of dairy, yogurt, and of course, all the meats, everything from octopus to cow. So pigs and lamb and fish and all that kind of stuff. Those have protein in them. They also are a source of fat. The main vegan source of fat are nuts, seeds, and avocados. Okay, those are primarily fat, and that's where most vegans get most of their fat from. Okay, so let's take a look at these macronutrients. We're still working on these 3 macronutrients because we need an understanding of them in order to really fully appreciate the information that I'm giving you in this video about curing diabetes. Okay, so let's look at carbohydrates first. Carbohydrates mainly from the pasta and the rice and the beans and the bread and all that kind of stuff. Starch, also known just as starch. These are primarily what's called complex carbohydrates. So anything that you cook, any grains, any beans, any pasta, any rice, pizza crust, on and on, anything with flour in it. These are all what's referred to as complex carbohydrates. Okay. Fruit, as I said before, is in a whole separate category, all in and of itself, although it is primarily a source of carbohydrates, high-density sweet food. It is referred to as a simple carbohydrate. Okay, so that's the big difference between high-density sweet fruit, things like bananas, that might be 85 to 90% calorie. There might be 85 to 90 calories in one single banana. This is a simple carbohydrate. Now, the biggest issue between complex and simple carbohydrates is that complex carbohydrates are just that. They are complex, they are difficult to break down, and they basically tax your digestive system. Uh, and yeah, so they're like not the optimal way to get carbohydrates. Um, and carbohydrates are necessary because they are turned into sugar in your system and ultimately into glycogen, which is what fuels your body. So for everything from blinking your eyes to talking to walking to running a marathon, that all requires carbohydrate sources of sugar, glycogen, either on an immediate basis or stored in your muscle cells. Okay, so carbohydrates are very necessary. Um, and as I said before, complex carbohydrates are not optimal. In fact, they're downright damaging in the long run. If you have a choice between eating something that like is extremely damaging, like animal products, right, um, and complex carbohydrates, well, that's a no-brainer. You choose complex carbohydrates. That's why people become vegetarian and vegan. Um, they may choose to cook those complex carbohydrates. In fact, that's the only way you can eat a complex carbohydrate, is to cook it, right? In very rare instances, you can soak them and then sprout them and eat them. But most people are not going to do that. They're eating complex carbohydrates and they're going to cook them. Okay. Um, there are other aspects to that. Cooking something, cooking anything, is going to reduce its nutritive value greatly by a huge percentage. So any nutrients that are in those foods, those complex carbohydrates, are going to be reduced tremendously by cooking them. They're also going to be turned into an acidic substance, okay? And we'll explore that a little bit. Of course, the optimal condition of your body is to be on the alkaline scale, not the acidic scale. So you want your body, your metabolism, your blood to be alkaline, not acidic. And every time you cook something, that increases the acidity of that, of your body. Acidity leads to all kinds of problems. It's primarily the cause of most diseases. It leads to calcification. So every part of your body can be calcified, from your brain, a la Alzheimer's disease, to your joints. You know, as an example of that, arthritis. Okay. So another thing that eating cooked grains strongly contributes to is something called mucoid plaque, which is what happens in your digestive organs when you're eating acidic food, mostly cooked food, carbohydrates, and animal products. Your digestive organs, the walls of your digestive organs become impacted with what they call a mucoid plaque, which is like a tarry kind of substance that just layers on those organs, on the walls of those organs over periods of many years. And the acidic nature of cooked carbohydrates, things like complex carbohydrates, um, is what is the primary cause of this. And if you go through a cleansing process like I did, you can get rid of this plaque. And of course, it cuts down on your ability to absorb nutrients properly. Plaque is that you don't need really to cleanse. I mean, it helps, if you want to do clay cleanse, clay and psyllium and that sort of thing. That's a quick way to get it out of your system. But I'm pretty well convinced that just eating raw food has a sort of cleansing effect on your digestive system. Well, definitely it does. I liken it to you're getting a little bit of scrubbing every day because that raw food is going through with high fiber, and it's allowing your intestinal organs to rebound from the abuse that they have suffered from inappropriate food, food that's inappropriate for human consumption. And it sort of has a scrubbing effect. So if you're eating a lot of raw food, I'm pretty sure you're getting rid of any mucoid plaque that is accumulated in your digestive food. Eating cooked food actually does is it sparks something called leucocytosis. Now, this has to do with white blood cell count. So when you get a foreign invader in your body and you have, or you have an infection or something like this, your white blood cell count elevates itself automatically from about 1 million to up to like 13 to 15 million. And it does this in response to some foreign invader in your body in order to deal with that and get rid of it. The fact is that every time you eat cooked food, your body treats it as a foreign invader, and your white blood cell count increases to that level, which it normally does when it's trying to assault and get rid of a foreign invader. So you can imagine the effects of doing this repeatedly every day for your entire life, what that potentially can do to your body. Okay, I'm sure it has a tremendous effect on the aging process, and there's got to be other damaging results from this process called leukocytosis. So that along with preserving the enzymatic quality of the food are two of the primary reasons why we eat raw food. So in the 90s is when the raw food movement came into vogue, and I just happened to be on the health kick. 1990, Thanksgiving of 1990 was when I ate my last piece of animal at Thanksgiving dinner. A year or so before that, I had been exposed to the Fit for Life program, and that got me interested in the food combining and proper fruit consumption and the idea of not eating animal products. Another thing that Harvey and Marilyn Diamond of the Fit for Life book introduced me to was the concept of natural hygiene, which I will briefly explain because it's something that very few people are aware of. But basically it says that there are 3 cycles that you go through in a 24-hour period. From 3 a.m. to 12 a.m., 12 p.m. is your elimination cycle. From 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. is your absorption, or is your cycle in which you are feeding yourself. That's the best time for you to be taking on food and digesting it. From 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. is your absorption cycle, obviously, because you're asleep, so you're absorbing a lot of the nutrition at that time. So there's 3 cycles, and one sort of designs one's diet according to those cycles. So in the 3 a.m. to 12 p.m. cycle, you're eating primarily fruit, which is very cleansing and helps you eliminate, especially if you start the morning off with citrus, which will help you eliminate. So you're getting rid of the waste products in your body at that time. And then starting at 12 p.m., you're really you're cutting back a little bit on the fruit, depending on when you eat dinner. I mean, you can continue to eat fruit, mostly high-density sweet fruit at that time, and you're taking on nutrients. Okay, so that's during that period, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. you are eating lunch, which might be fruit, which might be a salad. If you're a cooked vegan, it might be grains and a salad or whatever. And if you're like a low-fat raw vegan, you're eating your low-fat raw vegan meal, vegetables and fat, during that time between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. It doesn't really apply to a low-fat raw vegan if you go beyond 8 p.m., but if you're doing anything else like cooked food or meat eating or stuff, you don't want to eat anything after 8 p.m. it'll have a significant effect on your um, energy level the next day. So, and then from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., you're not eating anything, you're just absorbing nutrients as you continue to digest what you've eaten. So that's kind of a natural hygiene in a nutshell. Additionally to that is the concept of density of food. So in your 3 a.m. to 12 p.m. cycle, you're eating much less dense food, okay? Usually greens and fruit, okay? These are what's called high water content foods. They're not very dense and they're easy to digest. They don't rob you of your energy. As the day goes on and you progress into the next cycle, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., where you're taking in food, then gradually you increase the density over that period of time. So you're still eating fruit at noon, but maybe you're going to have a salad for lunch. And then, of course, for dinner, you're going to have heavier foods when you need less energy to get through the day. So that's when you start eating what's called low water content food, or food that is low or high in density. It's harder to digest. Your body has to use more energy to digest it, so you lose a little energy or a lot of energy in a lot of cases, by eating those high density foods later on in the day. So the raw food movement came around, like in the 1991, 92, 93, something like that. And everybody got all excited about that. And they wound up imitating a lot of conventional dishes with a lot of nuts, seeds, and avocados. And the result of that was getting the 60% of your diet, of the total calories you consume in fat. And so it wound up being more unhealthy than just about any other diet out there. And I can attest to this because I did it for at least 10 years and I never felt well. I knew the concept was great, the idea of preserving the enzyme quality of the food, but I had no idea about the fat content until I happened to be so fortunate as to run into Doug Graham and the 80-10-10 method while I was doing a woofer engagement at Sedro-Woolley in the state of Washington. So I got lucky in that, very lucky in that case, because it just gave me my life back. But that was the thing. That was another aspect of the whole fat thing. The raw food movement initially that happened at that time completely fell apart after a couple of years of having festivals, and now it's all gone to fruit festivals. A la 80-10-10. So you can see that the truth was finally out. And fortunately for all of us, we now have that information available to us. Okay, so complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are very easy to digest. They have no detrimental effects on your body. They are full of fiber. Okay, fiber is required for your gut biome to thrive. They are not cooked. You don't want to eat simple carbohydrates cooked. And they're readily available. They're a very clean source of carbohydrates. They require no animal cruelty, and they're environmentally sound, especially if you're eating organic simple carbohydrates. All right. That's the other thing about complex carbohydrates, is that most complex carbohydrates, in fact, even in whole foods, 85% of all the food in whole foods is GMO. So if you're eating complex carbohydrates, you're eating GMO grains, grains and rice, beans, pasta, blah, 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 right? And we all know what GMO does to the environment. Genetically modified seeds and plants are then sprayed with, what has now been abandoned by the major corporation that produced it. I forget the name of it. So it's sprayed with, highly toxic pesticide that's designed to kill everything but the plant, right? And the plant just absorbs all that through the soil and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, people wind up getting all kinds of diseases from that. That is agribusiness food. Agribusiness controls most of the food production in the United States. And almost all of the complex carbohydrates are grown, owned, distributed by agribusiness. Okay. So that's another drawback of complex carbohydrates. So the optimal source of carbohydrate sugar in order to fuel your body is the simple carbohydrates, which are high density sweet fruit. There's a certain amount of carbohydrates in what's called acidic fruit, acid fruit, and subacid fruit. Things like acid fruit is something like an orange or a tangerine or a tangelo or a grapefruit or a grape. These are acid fruits. Subacid fruits are things like apples, nectarines, plums, that sort of thing. There's a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of tartness in them, you know, whereas, you know, acid fruits tend to be pretty tart primarily, and sweet fruits tend to be just sweet. They're not tart or sour at all. Okay. So that's the story on carbohydrates in a nutshell. Let's look at protein, the sources of protein. Protein exists in most vegetables, if not all vegetables. Okay. All the protein that you need is in vegetables. It's basically made from amino acids, and there are many complete, you know, vegetables that have complete amino acids in them that will suffice to allow your body to make protein. Also, animal products are a source of protein. Okay, they are not optimal. Obviously, there are many detrimental things about animal protein. Just briefly to go into them, things like uric acid. When animals are slaughtered, their urine explodes into their veins and permeates all of their muscles, all of their cells, basically. And so when you're eating meat, you're eating basically something that's been flavored by the urine of that animal. In fact, that's what gives it its flavor. Uric acid is extremely damaging to the body. It will contribute to calcification, which is, you know, causes Alzheimer's, causes plaque buildup in your arteries, causes, you know, decreased circulation through arterial sclerosis, and things like high blood pressure, cancer. Ultimately, animal products, they're eating feed that's GMO ridden, pesticide ridden. They're taking they're given antibiotics. They're giving probably all kinds of growth hormones and all this other stuff. So all that leads to cancer, obviously. And keep in mind that the FDA, you know, they're bought and paid for by the industry. So if you think the FDA is guarding you, is at the gate of guarding your food, they're not. Okay, they're strictly bought and paid for by the industry. It's all about capitalism. So anyways, there are many detriments to animal products. If you look at cheese, things like cheese and yogurt and milk, these are great mucus producers, you know. It's unbelievable to me that people don't realize that if you look at a glass of milk or a piece of cheese, you can just see what happens when it gets into your body and is partially digested. You know, it turns into mucus, right? So if you're clogged up, you know, getting respiratory problems and you know, sinus problems and all these things, you know, that's from the animal products. So those are the main sources of protein. And now we can move on to fat. Fat is the culprit. Fat is what we need to cut down to get rid of diabetes. Okay, now let's look at the fat content of of different types of diets. Okay, we'll start with the standard American diet. The standard American diet, which is eating meat 2 or 3 times, going to fast food once or twice a week, eating animal products, every day, poorly combining your food, eating everything under the sun in one meal, overeating, binge eating. This is standard American diet stuff. Eating candy, processed sugar, processed food that has no fiber in it. You eat this way, standard American diet, approximately 40% on average of your diet is fat, okay? If you are a vegetarian, that may be the case too if you're eating a lot of beans and stuff, but not really. You're actually getting probably about the same amount of fat if you're eating a lot of nuts, seeds, and avocados. Maybe a little less than that 40%. If you're a vegan, you're probably getting, who knows, depending on what you eat, anywhere from 20 to 40%. If you're a high-fat raw vegan, where you're making all kinds of things out of nuts, seeds, and avocados, which is what happened when the raw food movement first started in the 90s. Everybody was imitating traditional, conventional SAD food by using nuts, seeds, and avocados. And it wound up being 60% on average of fat in your diet. So that gives you some idea about the different diets and what their fat content is. If you look at low-fat raw vegan, like what I follow, 80-10-10, you keep your fat consumption down to 10%, and most of that comes from seeds, nuts, and avocados. And we're talking 1 avocado or a handful of nuts or a handful of seeds or a tablespoon or 2 of tahini or pumpkin seed butter or sunflower seed butter used as a way to make salad dressing combined with limes or lemons. That's what you're talking about in terms of your fat source and your fat intake. So that's how you keep your fat to 10% of total calories consumed. You're eating tons of fruit, a lot of high-density sweet fruit, like in my case, 30 to 40 pounds of high-density sweet fruit a week. And that's giving you all your simple carbohydrate energy source, very clean, very efficient to digest. And, your other 10% in your diet, your other 20% is divided between the protein you get from various sources and the fat that you get from various sources. At this point, we can look at what it takes to if you're a standard American diet and you want to cut your fat to 10% of calories. Now let's discuss why you want to do that. Okay, so in the 50s, I believe in the 1950s, it came to light in certain studies and whatnot that if one consumed more than 10% of fat in their diet, that the sugars from the carbohydrates they were also consuming that made their way into their bloodstream would not be able to get out of their bloodstream and into their muscles to fuel their muscle cells. So let's take a look at that. And I'll put a link to this explanation as explained by Dr. Neil Barnard, who is who's very good at explaining these kind of things. He is a vegan doctor. He doesn't have a clue about cooked food or food combining for that matter, but he does have a very good grip on the idea of cutting your fat consumption, and he explains it perfectly. And what he explains is that there is something called insulin receptors that are associated with the cells in your muscles. And these insulin receptors allow the sugar from your bloodstream to feed into your muscles and power them. They also allow your muscles to get that sugar and store it as glycogen for later use. So what they found out in the 50s was that if your fat consumption was over 10%, then those insulin receptors cease to function and they would not allow the sugars to get out of your bloodstream uh, into your muscles to fuel your body. Now, um, this information is not well known. In fact, very, very few people are aware of this. The solution for the medical establishment in curing diabetes is to cut the sugar, right? They say you got to cut down on the carbohydrates, you got to cut your sugar intake because it's sugar that's causing the problem, all right? Well, it makes no sense. Sugar is what you need. Of course, you don't need refined sugar, you need the sugar from simple carbohydrates to fuel your body. Refined sugar will do that, right? Because you like if you eat a bunch of candy, you get an immediate high off of that that has you crashing there sometimes thereafter. I mean, if you ever go to a party with a bunch of kids and there's a lot of candy, you know, it's total hyperactivity for a couple hours and then it's total crash. Well, those are the effects of refined sugar. Okay, and refined sugar is in just about everything they sell in a supermarket. Probably 85% of all the food in supermarkets has refined sugar in it. So, anyways, we're talking fat. So yeah, the medical establishment latched onto the idea that you needed to cut your sugar intake. Okay, and and that would be the quickest way to cure diabetes. But of course, it doesn't work because diabetes is a progressive disease. If that worked, then you wouldn't develop more serious symptoms as time went on. Okay, but that's not the case. People with diabetes develop more serious symptoms as time goes on. It may be that they can sharply curtail them by a very, very strict diet where they're not eating any sugar, but your energy level is going to be nil in that case. Um, so I'm not sure that's the way you want to go. But anyways, the medical establishment latched onto that. It's a very easy concept. They say, oh, well, your blood sugar's high, so you need to cut down on the sugar intake. Well, your blood sugar's high because that sugar can't get out of your bloodstream into your muscle cells. Okay? This is the natural process for you to get energy. Okay? So if we look at natural and unnatural processes, so let's take a look at keto. Keto is this whole idea that you want to base um, your energy output and capacity by getting your energy from fat. Okay, so yes, your body will, if you're consuming fat, only fat, your body will break that down into energy. Okay, it will be able to fuel itself for energy. However, it's a very unhealthy practice. It's actually designed for emergency situations, and that's really why your system is set up so that only 10% of fat consumption is going to be nominal or optimal to allow the sugars from the carbohydrates to fuel your body, because that go that 10%, right? Well, let me put it this way: the mechanism that allows you to convert fat, if you're only eating fat, to sugar is more of an emergency mechanism. So I firmly believe that we evolved so that if we did run out of carbohydrates or had a temporary, uh, you know, hang up in the production and consumption of carbohydrates, that we would be able to eat fat and still be able to function. All right, but it's definitely a very unhealthy thing. There are all kinds of side effects from ketosis. If you're stranded on a desert island and all there is around is a pig or some pigs, and there's no other source of food, well, yeah, you're going to eat the pig. Um, and you're going to get fat and you're going to produce energy from that fat, but that's an emergency, very rare emergency situation. It's not something that you want to practice every day. There are all kinds of side effects from ketosis, most of which are currently being suppressed in terms of information on the internet, because keto has become such a popular thing and so many people are making so much money off of it. So anyways, that's that on ketosis. The keto diet, highly recommend. You don't ever want to primarily rely on animal products, meat consumption as your source of food. It's just the worst thing you can possibly do. People do lose weight when they go on a keto diet. As far as I know, and what I've heard, is that they gain it all back, in 6 months to a year or 2 years. But the reason why they lose weight is not necessarily because they're eating primarily animal products, okay? What's happening is they're dropping the carbohydrates from their diet, so they're not improperly combining their food, right? Because when you combine a carbohydrate with a protein fat food like an animal product, then they neutralize, right? And they don't get digested and they get accumulated as fat. So that is the reason why people lose weight on keto diets, is because they're not improperly combining their food as a general rule. Now, if they did the same thing with carbohydrates, if they eliminated the animal products and went on a strictly carbohydrate diet, the same thing would happen, only it would be a lot healthier. Combining. So food combining is something that has been totally ignored by 99.999% of all nutritionists. It's considered to be bunk by many vegan doctors, right? Michael Greger among one of them. And most vegan promoters and doctors and influencers on YouTube never mention it. And it's probably one of the most important aspects of proper nutrition. It's proper food combining. I'm not going to get into it, except that there are sources of information about it on the internet that you can look up. Robert Klein, I forget the guy's name, but initially I was introduced to it by the Harvey and Marilyn Diamond in a book called Fit for Life, which was the first book really that I ever read with regard to health. And it set me on the right path. He introduces the whole idea of food combining. Food combining is just the idea that the reality is that different types of food create different digestive environments by secretions, and that the primary two types of secretions for digestion are acid and alkali. And when you combine foods that have both, that inspire your body to produce the acid and the alkali, or one or the other, and you combine them together, that they neutralize, just like in a simple high school chemistry experiment. And so, the consequence of that is that your food doesn't get digested, that the exit time is increased 3 or 4 times. A meal should be out of your system in 24 hours. If you're improperly combining it, it will take up to 4 or 5 days to get out of your system. It will produce gas through fermentation, and smelly gas through putrefaction. So these are the obvious symptoms of improper food combining. And so it's very necessary to learn about that, because it's very detrimental to your digestive process. And the fact of the matter is that obesity, I would say at least 50% of obesity is caused by improper food combining. So when you put the idea of food, overeating plus processed food plus improper food combining, this is what you get. You get obesity. And obesity, you need to look at it differently. Obesity is a sign of starvation, okay? Because it's primarily caused by improperly combining your food. Um, you're basically starving your body of nutrition, so your body keeps inducing you to eat more food, okay? Um, and this is why people become obese. And contrary to what looks obvious to you, the obesity is a symptom of starvation, okay? So, um, and that brings up the other idea that, compulsive eating, I mean, eating according to your cravings, this just doesn't occur in a diet like the low fat, raw vegan 80-10-10 diet that I follow. You don't eat because you're craving, you eat because your body is appreciates what you're putting into it and it responds to you, and you want to continue to have it respond in such a beneficial way, energetically, okay? It's almost impossible to get depressed on or have psychological issues on a low fat raw vegan diet because you're supplying such high quality nutrition to yourself, you know and the body just heals itself when you do that. So let me just do an addendum to this video. I'm going to read it off of an Instagram post that I made. And although it sounds like you need to eliminate a lot of things, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as you bring things into your life, you bring food into your life, exercise into your life, and all the other things that create health, you bring that into your life. This doesn't leave much room for the things that damage you, okay? So if you think of it as, oh, I have to deny myself, I can't eat the apple pie or the ice cream or whatever, that'll never get you anywhere, okay? Once you learn to substitute foods, like instead of ice cream, you eat Nice Dream, which is frozen banana ice cream. It's out of this world. You can flavor it with other fruit. It's just amazing. You won't ever want to eat ice cream again, okay? So once you learn substitution, okay, and then you start bringing these things into your life, there will be no room for the bad stuff, the stuff that damages you, okay? So let me read this addendum. It says, you want to be healthy. Well, this is how you do it. You eliminate all animal products, transition to 80% of your diet in fruit, mostly high calorie, high density sweet fruit. You learn about food combining. You keep fat from nuts, seeds, and avocados, limited to 10% of total calories consumed. You stop cooking your food. You stop drinking water. You eat only organic. You exercise every day. You stop taking supplements, okay? Then it says, the truth hurts. That's the truth for reaching your full potential. Permanent health, optimal weight, optimal energy, no medication, vastly retarded aging, and elimination of disease, chronic disease and sickness. Part 2 says, you want to be healthy. Oh, yeah. Part 2. Oh, yeah. Get rid of all oils, all salt, whether it's pink, white, purple, green vinegar, or it comes from the Sahara Desert or your backyard. Eliminate all vinegar, all fermented foods. Bring that which maintains your health, vitality, and energy into your life. Reject what is damaging to you. The truth hurts, but only for a couple of months. Then it feels fantastic. Okay? Bye-bye to high blood pressure, clogged arteries, diabetes, dementia, Parkinson's, autoimmune disease, arthritis, etc., and common sickness and afflictions such as flu, colds, acne, and headaches. It will eliminate depression, brain fog, psychological and emotional impediments. And you will enjoy tremendously enhanced athletic performance, even if you are not an athlete. And I did want to make another note about the flu or the colds. Cold people, what people refer to as a cold, which everybody's convinced is somehow infectious. Okay. Well, they have never discovered a cold germ. You know, we can put people on the moon, right? We can supposedly identify COVID and come up with a vaccine for it, but we can't identify the cold germ. We can't isolate it. We can't find it. Okay. The reason for that is because there is no cold germ. Okay. So, what happens, the reason you have the symptoms that you have when you get a cold is because your body is cleansing. It's a natural cleansing process. It is sparked by a change in temperature, and that's why people get colds mostly at the same time. They think the cold is going around, that it's infectious, but it's not. If you notice, if you pay attention, people get their colds usually at the change of the seasons, which is when there's a significant change in the temperature. Okay. So, and that's another reason why you get a cold when you go outside with your hair wet and it's cold outside and you get this sudden chill. Okay. That is a signal to your body that it needs to cleanse itself. And the reason why it needs to cleanse itself is because it's overly acidic from all the horrible animal products and acidic cooked foods that you've been consuming. It stores those in the body stores those, and then when it is cued by a significant temperature change to cleanse that out of your system, voila, you get all the symptoms of a cold, which are primarily about mucus. Okay. So all that stuff coming out of your nose and your throat and you're coughing up and all that stuff, that's simply the acidity that has been isolated by your body and is now being eliminated through this painful process of a cold. If you really get it bad, you get pneumonia. Okay. Eating, consumption, nutrition is all about levels, right? So, I started off like everybody else, and because of my refusal to take medication, because of my refusal to eat processed food, my refusal to eat food produced by unnatural methods, my refusal to engage in things like eating pesticides in, non-organic food and all that. Because of all that, I am a low-fat raw vegan, which is really the ultimate way to fuel your body. This is a totally natural, ultimate way to provide nutrition to your physical being. So that is really the upper echelon of the whole diet game. Of course, the benefits are unbelievably tremendous. I feel like I'm 20, uh, 29 out of 30 days a month. And my ultimate goal is to continue to do what I did and do it better than when I was 20, right up until my last day on this planet. So I'm actively involved in a lot of things, and a lot of physical exercise, like power walking with weights, playing or surfing, riding my bike long distances, lifting weights, working out, doing resistance training, jazz dancing, free-form dancing, and just about any other sport that comes down the pike. Not that I spend all of my time doing these things, but I do something every day for probably at least 30 minutes. They say that you need to get your heart rate up at least 20 minutes every day to maintain a healthy heart. If you want to push that and build a strong heart, then get yourself a heart rate chart, which tells you where your heart rate should be pushing to when you're exercising. Now, when I do a lot of the sports and stuff that I do, I've checked my heart rate many times. I check it on a continual basis when I'm doing heavy hands, which is walking with weights, which is primarily cardio. and I'm reaching a peak of about 150. Recommended for me is like 128 at the age of 72. My peak is 128. 150 is like for somebody in their late 20s or early 30s. And I have no problem getting there. So, um, you know, the benefits are tremendous. I never get sick. Um, COVID, I tested positive once for COVID. I had an upset stomach for a day or two, and that was it. And I was around people that were exposed to it all the time, working in shelters. Um, so basically, you never get sick. You don't take any medication, right? I mean, your energy level is extremely high. Your recovery time from exercise is very quick. Uh, you know, um, so if these are the results that you want to go towards, then you need to watch my other videos and follow the 80-10-10 scenario. Look up Doug Graham on the internet and listen to some of his lectures, um, and start making that transition. Um, it's safe to say that if you don't, that at some point, obviously, the medical model is going to take over and you're going to become dependent on that. You're going to lose your energy. Your blood pressure is going to go up if you continue to eat animal products. I mean, the progression is that as you get older, your blood pressure increases, right? And the reason for that is because the animal products are creating mucoid, or they're creating plaque inside your arteries, which is narrowing the arteries and cutting down on your blood, your blood capacity, your capacity to circulate blood through your system. And as you get older and you've been eating all these animal products, that's what happens until it becomes acute and you start suffering things like strokes and heart attacks. Raw food diet. So the last time I checked my blood pressure, I did a video about this, and I was in a dentist office and I made note of it, and I did some research when I got back and found out that my blood pressure was equivalent to that of somebody in their late 20s. I'm 72 years old, okay? Why do I have blood pressure in my, that's the equivalent of somebody in their late 20s? Well, obviously, it's about the low-fat raw vegan diet, right? So the benefits of something like a low-fat raw vegan diet are just tremendous. And I will say this, that although you think it's completely outlandish if you're eating a standard American diet and you can't believe that people actually do this and thrive, when you get there, you don't want to go back. The benefits are so tremendous. The satisfaction level of eating organic, raw food, prepared in all kinds of different ways, properly combined, is absolutely off the charts, okay? It's totally non-compulsive eating, okay? So you're not compulsed to eat this way. You do it because of the benefits, because your body is telling you to do it and continue to do it. So, yeah, so you might want to look into that if you're not satisfied with the way you're getting on. As you age, of course, health becomes an issue. It becomes more and more important. So although at 20 you feel like you're invincible and you can do anything you want, that will not last forever. You will definitely hit the wall at some point, and so that's when you can utilize this information. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I need to add to this. But yeah, so, it's basically very simple. It's a very simple concept. It's a very simple concept. You simply cut the fat intake, continue to eat carbohydrates, okay? And I would say that, like if you ate like I did, or maybe even as a cooked vegan who was limiting their consumption of fat to 10%, I would say in 2 to 3 months, you'd be completely free of all symptoms of diabetes and it wouldn't be detectable, okay? So if that's something that you're interested in, please, follow my advice. Check out high-fat, low-vegan diets on the internet. Find out as much as you can. See if you can pull it off. You know, if you're okay with medication, if you're okay with slowing down, with high blood pressure, with, you know, potentially getting cancer and all these other diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and everything else that's at an epidemic level, obesity, if you're content with that, fine, you know. But if you're not, then, you know, take to heart what I'm trying to communicate to you, and you know, hopefully you'll all do that. So anyway, so if we're talking life expectancy, you know, the differences between those people who are eating meat, carnivorous people, vegetarians, vegans, cooked vegans, and raw vegans. Basically, I can sort of, you know, it's in my mind that changing your diet to a low-fat raw vegan diet is probably going to add 20 additional disease-free years to your lifespan. Okay, so if you're think you're going to die at 85, you know, 105 easy. Okay, so you know, that's excluding other circumstances that may curtail your life that aren't related to diet or natural healthful living. The fact is that eating animal products is came out of something called the herding culture, which originated when people started to grow crops and domesticate animals. Okay, this created a whole human culture that has pervaded humanity for thousands of years, based on the idea that your wealth, uh, you can accumulate wealth according to how many heads of cattle or goats or sheep that you have, and how much land you acquire to um, grow crops. Okay, this is where the origination of the herding culture came from. We are still very much involved in the psychology of that herding culture. It permeates totally our lives, and we are herded. Okay, we are herded like animals, um, and this is one of the things that you step out of once you go away from animal agriculture and start experiencing a low-fat raw vegan diet. You start extracting yourself from the herding culture and the psychology of it. And you know, the herding culture was based on, well, the word capital is based on the word cap, which means head, and was associated with head of cattle. So the extent to which you were wealthy in terms of the capital that you owned was based on the number of the head of the cattle that you had. So you can see where that's going. Right. Now, the major consequence of this whole idea of the herding culture is that obviously it has permeated our entire existence. Okay. So you can imagine how hard it is to extract yourself in terms of the food that you consume and your nutritional program, and becoming as healthy as you can be. You can imagine how hard it is to extract yourself from the scenario that is totally opposed to that. Okay. So I understand that the cultural and traditional uh, impediments and inducive qualities in terms of keeping you in that scenario, and in terms of you having the willpower, the wherewithal to get out of that scenario, are extreme. Those conditions are extreme, and really, it is a decision that everyone has to make for themselves. Are they willing to go there, to take that step into optimal health, and abandon, you know, the all the myths and inducements of the herding culture that has so encapsulated our entire existence on this earth. So, anyways, my name's Trace Perot. I am the vegan cowboy, Yahoo, and I hope you got something out of this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Please comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. I know I've been off the internet, off of YouTube for quite a while, but I do get inspired from time to time to make a video, and this was one of those instances when I was inspired to attempt to convey my knowledge to people who might need it.